As soon as Caitlyn Clark and the Indiana Fever were eliminated, Alyssa Thomas, Connecticut's best player, or Connecticut's most hyped player, went to the podium and started complaining about Caitlyn Clark fans.
I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base.
Alyssa Thomas has just been suspended after a disturbing racist attack on Caitlyn Clark, and her reaction has been nothing but a disaster. After flopping in the playoffs against the Minnesota Lynx, it seems the pressure was too much for her, but instead of taking accountability in her post-game interview, she pulled the racism card out of nowhere, accusing Clark's fans of being racist. If you're watching this, you're likely a Caitlyn Clark supporter, and according to Alyssa, that apparently makes you a racist too. Well, thanks for clearing that up, Alyssa.
We all know what this really is. It's an attack on Caitlyn Clark. Caitlyn Clark's the wrong face for this league because her fans are so racist.
It's wild how someone can completely ignore Clark's incredible stats and claim it's all about her skin color. Honestly, a suspension seems well-deserved in this case. But do you know what Alyssa actually said that landed her in hot water? Why is everyone turning against her now? And is there any shot she'll be forgiven by the league? Let's break it all down real quick.
And there's no place for it. And we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it.
The Connecticut Sun just got knocked out of the playoffs in the most embarrassing way, courtesy of a brutal beatdown by the Minnesota Lynx in Game 2. After a rough game, Alyssa walked into the post-game interview looking like she was about to lose it.
We come to play basketball for our job and it's fun, but we don't want to go to work every day and have social media blown up over things like that. It's uncalled for, and something needs to be done, whether it's, them checking their fans or this league checking. There's no time for it anymore.
As soon as a reporter had the nerve to bring up her poor performance, it was like a switch flipped. Instead of talking about her disappearing act in the playoffs, she went straight on the offensive, calling out Caitlyn Clark's entire fan base for being racist. She didn't just mention a few trolls or talk about dealing with online hate. Nope, she took it further, claiming that Clark's supporters are all racists who are messing with the mental health of black players.
Instagram and Twitter, these are choices we make. There's an easy way. The league doesn't have to get involved. The Indiana Fever don't have to do something to get you away from social media. Put your phone down. Don't download the apps. Don't engage.
It's like she'd been holding on to this idea, just waiting for the perfect moment to drop it. The second someone mentioned her poor game, she flipped the script. You could see the confusion on the reporters' faces. They had no clue how to react. No one pushed her for specifics or asked for any proof.
Well, now they found another victim. The fans of Indiana. Now, I'm going to side a little bit with these idiots. I'm going to side a little bit with Alyssa Thomas, who said she is the latest WNBA woke gas bag to rip Indiana Fever fan over alleged racism, demanding the franchise and league do something about it. What do you want them to do?
They just let her rant, shifting the focus away from her playoff meltdown and onto this manufactured controversy. Instead of calling out her weak performance, the attention suddenly turned to Alyssa Thomas versus Caitlyn Clark's fan base. Honestly, it's almost impressive how fast she flipped the narrative, turning herself from the GOAT, in the worst way, to playing the victim of so-called racist fans. But you have to wonder, was this really just a spur-of-the-moment rant or a calculated move to dodge all the criticism coming her way? Alyssa came out swinging, claiming that in her entire 11-year career, she's never faced abuse like this until now. And who does she blame? The Indiana Fever fans, who've been riding the Caitlyn Clark hype ever since her breakout rookie season. But here's the kicker, did Alyssa provide any proof? Not a single shred, no specific examples, no incidents, not even a vague tweet to back her up. Instead, she made a sweeping accusation, suggesting that the entire Fever fan base is out to wreck her mental peace because Caitlyn Clark's mere presence is supposedly that toxic.
Who gives a rat's ass? Seriously.
Caitlyn Clark is Kunta Clark. She's the actual slave that everybody else is exploiting for their benefit. Angel Reese included at the top of that list. Now Alyssa Thomas jumps in and says, let me get my piece.
Nice try, Alyssa. But let's talk timing here. Why drop these bombshell claims right after getting crushed in a crucial playoff game? It couldn't be more obvious. She was scrambling to change the story, She knew the media would be ready to tear her apart for that disastrous performance, likely ready to ask why she crumbled when her team needed her the most or how she got completely outplayed on the season's biggest stage. So instead of facing the heat, she pulled the ultimate distraction move, shifting the blame onto Caitlyn Clark's fans, hoping everyone would forget she even showed up on the court that night. But here's where things get really shady. Thomas wasn't just attacking Clark's supporters, she was subtly framing Clark herself as the real issue. Think about it. By suggesting Clark's influence is sparking all this negativity, she's indirectly painting Clark as the villain without ever actually naming her. It's a clever way to tarnish Clark's image without openly dragging her into the mud. And this isn't the first time these two have had issues. There's been bad blood brewing ever since an earlier incident put them both at the center of controversy.
If you got people in a room, if you got a bunch of dudes in a room and says, let's fuck up the WNBA, we couldn't have came up a master plan what these women have done.
Flashback to August 14, 2024, during a fiery matchup between the Indiana Fever and Connecticut Sun. Alyssa Thomas laid down what can only be described as the hardest screen imaginable on Caitlyn Clark. And no, this wasn't your typical basketball screen. Clark, known for her lightning-fast moves, was completely blindsided and hit the floor hard. Fans watching live were gasping, thinking she might have broken something. It was that intense. And what did the refs do? They hit Thomas with an offensive foul, but that was it. No review, no flagrant foul consideration, nothing. Even WNBA analysts like Diana Taurasi called out how poorly it was handled. Taurasi didn't hold back, saying Thomas should have been ejected for such a reckless play. But did Clark make a fuss? Not at all. She bounced right back up, flashed her signature grin, and even winked at the crowd as if to say, I'm fine, this isn't going to throw me off.
Carrington, as we've talked about earlier this week, in game 1, poked Caitlyn Clark in the eye intentionally, in my view, and in most rational people's view. Your hands don't curl up, you jab people in the eye and you pull your hand back immediately after you've accomplished your goal. Nothing happens to Carrington. This isn't really even discussed. She gets questioned about it once. Caitlyn Clark gets questioned about it. Caitlyn Clark takes the high road. She's not engaging. Hats off to Caitlyn Clark.
Classic Caitlyn. While everyone else was losing it over the lack of officiating, she stayed cool, calm, and completely unbothered. It was one of those moments that just made her fans love her even more.
The WNBA, because it's a woke league and because it's leaned into people directing their hatred of Caitlyn Clark at Caitlyn Clark fans.
For Alyssa, that was when everything began to unravel. Clark's fans were furious, and they made sure Alyssa felt the heat online. At the same time, the league released a statement announcing her firing, citing her reckless play against Caitlyn Clark, one of the brightest stars in the league. Instead of owning up to a move that could have seriously injured a rookie sensation, she took a different route. She started portraying herself as the victim, claiming the backlash was all about race rather than the fact that she nearly took out a promising player.
It comes as a byproduct of, Caitlyn, I love you to death, but girl, if you don't work on that defense, you ain't winning no championships.
It was a total deflection, and anyone paying attention could see right through it. Fans were angry because she played dirty, plain, and simple. Race had nothing to do with it. But Alyssa wasn't interested in explaining her actions. Instead, she doubled down, hurling accusations and pointing fingers in hopes of creating enough chaos to shift the focus away from her own failures. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. She dragged Caitlyn Clark's name into the controversy, suggesting that the backlash was part of a coordinated attack from Clark's so-called racist fans. But let's be real, this was all just a smokescreen. When you break it down, the whole mess started because Alyssa refused to own up to her reckless play and subpar performance. She chose to weaponize controversy to shield herself from criticism. What's even crazier is that by going down this path, she'd only make things worse for herself. Instead of just facing the fallout from one game, she turned it into a full-blown scandal.
She had to go to the NBA because of players calling all kinds of nasty racial names to Caitlyn Clark, white bitch being the most of. I mean, that's the players. Now they sit up there, the one idiot.
She thought she could escape one controversy by creating another, but all she did was dig herself a deeper hole. And it wasn't just the fans stirring the pot. Sports analysts and commentators from every corner of the internet jumped in too. Former WNBA legends like Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Miller didn't hold back, calling Thomas's hit unsportsmanlike and downright dangerous.
Caitlyn Clark was assaulted yesterday in her very first playoff game in the WNBA. We've seen the animus directed at Caitlyn Clark all year. It reached a boiling point yesterday.
Connecticut Sun players are catching serious heat from experts for targeting Caitlyn Clark during the playoff games. Finally, it seems some people in the WNBA still have common sense, because let's face it, the refs and lead officials were practically asleep every time Clark got hit. In both games, 2 Sun players straight up assaulted her, not just small fouls, but WWE-level takedowns. And yet, no foul calls, no whistles, not even a side eye from the officials.
ESPN wrote a story after the game that did not mention that the biggest star in the history of the WNBA, the first woman to ever be the biggest star in American sports, was assaulted 2 minutes into the game on a dirty play with one of these women with these long fake fingernails that stabbed her in the eye.
It's like everyone in charge completely forgot the rules exist when it comes to Caitlyn Clark. And if you somehow missed all the chaos, buckle up. What you're about to hear will blow your mind.
Caitlyn's first 2 shots against Wnba, she didn't have as much space as that last one, but I thought they were good shots. The first 2 shots of the game, the first 2 shots.
Those are good shots in the regular season. You're in the playoffs.
The Indiana Fever stormed into Game 2 of the playoffs against the Connecticut Sun, jumping to a quick 13-4 lead. And who else but the unstoppable force, Caitlyn Clark, leading the charge. In the first quarter alone, she was racking up stats like it was a video game. 6 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists in just a few minutes. As usual, she was absolutely dominating.
You're in it, it's hard to just take a second to just look and enjoy it. We're always looking for that edge. We're looking for that next, whatever we need to do to have these guys ready. We want to make sure they're prepared.
But of course, the Sun weren't about to let that slide. They had other plans, and Wnba Bonner had one mission: shut Clark down. And if that didn't work, start throwing elbows. And that's exactly what she did. At one point, Clark goes up for one of her signature deep threes, the kind that sends the crowd into a frenzy. And what does Bonner do? She makes sure Clark doesn't even have space to land. This wasn't an accidental bump. It was like Bonner decided, if I can't beat her, I might as well bulldoze her. And the refs? They just stood there like statues, acting like nothing happened. Yet Clark and her coach took it all in stride.
3 to shoot. Gonna have to hoist from the logo. An air ball. And Clark wanted a foul. Felt like Bonner ran into her. But a shot clock violation.